with the Weekly Opinions Roundtable and columnists David Ignatius, Eugene Robinson, and Christine Emba. What a morning! We woke up to North Korea's claim that it had destroyed its nuclear testing site, an apparent signal that Kim Jong-un was preparing for diplomacy with the United States. But within hours, this happened. President Trump issued an aggressive letter to Kim Jong-un, canceling their planned June 12th summit in Singapore. Trump said he'd been looking forward to the meeting, but had to back out because of Kim's open hostility after North Korea called Vice President Pence a political dummy. Trump also made a not-so-subtle threat, writing, "You talk about your nuclear capabilities, but ours are so massive and powerful that I pray to God they will never have to be used." Signing off, he said, "Write or call me if you want to talk." So, David, why this letter? Why this language? Why now?
Well, the letter, as so often with Donald Trump, was a shock, as it was intended to be. It's also the case that for the last, I'd say, several weeks, the U.S. North Korea diplomacy has been going in reverse. And I think one reason is that President Trump got so enamored of this idea of the summit that would produce a breakthrough and this easy talk of denuclearization, and when you have crowds chanting "Nobel Prize, Nobel Prize," you can decide that's a good idea. Let's do it. I think increasingly there was a concern that U.S. hopes were unrealistic, that the ground had not been laid for denuclearization, but for what Kim Jong-un, who's really been the driver of this diplomacy, has talked about, which is a phased process in which he makes concessions, receives rewards for that. So I think you can make the argument that given Trump's overeagerness and the lack of real preparation for what would happen at the summit, there's an argument for waiting, if that's what it proves to be. My fear is that this won't be waiting. This will plunge us back into a real period of confrontation, but we'll see.
I mean, who let Trump get to that point was what I always wondered. You could see how it would go to Trump's head that I'm going to be the one to bring peace to North Korea, and he's just going to denuclearize, and we'll make him rich, and everything will be fine. But anybody who had paid any attention to North Korea or in any sort of serious way over the last 30 years would consider that impossible. Certainly really far-fetched. It's not going to, they're not going to just give up their nuclear weapons. Who let Trump believe that and get so invested in that? Or did he just do it on his own?
I think he let himself get excited about the breakthrough, but the two drivers here, beyond Kim himself, who has been talking about this sort of breakthrough, first used the word denuclearization back in 2013. Nobody noticed, but was inviting talks. But the two drivers have been South Korea's President Moon Jae-in, who has engineered each phase of this. His intelligence service has done quite a masterful job of setting the table. And then China. China came in late. China's felt upset by this diplomacy. It's as if we're stealing their neighbor. The idea of a U.S. North Korean rapprochement, much as you think the Chinese might want that, no. So they summoned Kim, in effect, and have been helping him kind of, I think, tighten his position. So I say those two factors have been playing behind the scenes, encouraging Trump, but increasingly making his advisors, in particular John Bolton, worried that they were walking into something that would be very negative.
So you mentioned John Bolton, and we have a viewer who has some thoughts on that too. On Facebook, Anne-Marie says, I'm thinking Trump got rolled on the North Korea deal, and I think Bolton was definitely the one who queered the deal, an old salesman's term, LOL. So I am curious about your thoughts on kind of what was going on when we had Bolton show up using the tough language, mentioning Libya, which of course seems like didn't make Kim Jong-un feel any better about the summit. Was that a faux pas on his part, or was there anything strategic in using that language?
I don't think it was a faux pas. I think Bolton meant to say that the idea that there will be gradual process with North Korea holding on to weapons capability for a good long while was a non-starter. And I think he had support in that from administration colleagues. It was a disastrous choice of words because the Libya option refers to a Muammar Gaddafi who gave up his nuclear weapons, was deposed, and then is now very dead.
Exactly.
So that, not really an attractive prospect for
I don't
Kim
think
Jong
that's
Un.
for me,
Yeah, so
I'm going
that's-
to pass on that.
The
I'll
Libya
have the-
option, no, I think actually I won't, won't take that.
I'll have the nuclear standoff instead.
So did Bolton intend to blow up the negotiations? No, I don't think so. It's interesting that Trump initially walked back the Bolton
He did,
phrase,
right,
and
right,
he was
right.
still at that point so eager to save this
Right.
summit that he said, no, we don't want the Libya option. That's not what we. But clearly, when the North Korean rhetoric began to crank up, and I think when they read their intelligence about what had happened in China, and they saw the Chinese really kind of tightening the strings here, that's when they seemed to have moved to the exit.
Well, to the question of who let Trump do this, right? It seems like this whole process has actually sort of been Trump herring forward and saying like, yeah, totally, we'll meet with you in that first meeting without warning anyone. I think he said that and nobody knew that that was coming. Setting this date, making all of these statements about denuclearization, and everyone chasing after him, either trying to throw a wrench in the works, which I'm not so sure that John Bolton was trying to be that helpful here. And when Mike Pence reiterated the Libya language, like, I'm not sure that was an attempt to be helpful so much as an attempt to slow things down outside of using Trump. Everyone else seemed to be trying to put up roadblocks or slow the process down slightly, or at least control it in some way, perhaps so that there was time to discuss. And in the end, it's fallen apart.
Right, or create an actual process.
Or
Because
create-
there kind of
right.
wasn't. I mean, Trump said from the beginning, back into the campaign, I think, that, oh, sure, I would talk to him, right? I mean, I would, and actually, it's one of the things he said that kind of made sense. I mean, not talking to North Korea really hasn't worked very
That's
well.
what we've been doing.
So talking to North Korea probably couldn't be that much worse, leave things in a worse place. But to have that sort of conversation, you do have to have some sort of idea what you're going to talk about and at least agree on what the terms mean. When we say denuclearization, what are we talking about, and there was certainly no pre-agreement on what the two leaders were talking about. And also, if I were in the administration, I would be like President Moon, like, really? What did he really tell you? And is that the same thing as you told me? I would be pissed.
There's some, Gene, there's some bait and switch, I think, here on the part of Kim Jong-un. He has repeatedly referred to denuclearization. I gathered all the documentary evidence, as I say, going back 5 years that he's been talking about that. And I think that with his promises to move forward, the willingness to demolish today the nuclear test sites,
Yeah.
he led Americans to think that this would be easier than it in fact would be. And so, when the North Koreans didn't come to a planning meeting a week ago that was supposed to set the agenda, when I'm told they had real difficulty in getting even basic agreement about the language that would be in a communique, I think the Americans began to think, wait a minute, there's less here than we thought, and were they crazy to have thought it? I don't know enough to answer that.
So we have a quick question on Facebook from Bruce Katz, who asks, what implications might this, being the North Korea developments, have for the Iran negotiations?
Well, what Iran negotiations is the simple answer.
To be fair to Bruce, he did put negotiations in quotation marks.
So I think this will say to the Iranians that Trump is prepared to walk away even from something that looked really attractive. I think for the moment, the question really is how much of a U.S.-European confrontation are we going to have? Mm-hmm. Because if the U.S. is going to have to really upset Europe and its companies in making its secondary sanctions against Iran work for that to have any teeth, and there's going to be a real confrontation. The Europeans are already saying, well, we don't like this. So I think that's the prelude. Then we see the effect on Iran. The idea of the Iranians going back to the table seems to me to be far-fetched.
So Trump says in his letter that he sees a blossoming relationship with Kim Jong-un. I guess we'll see how that develops. But
Call
for
me,
now,
call me, call me.
Call me, want to talk.
please, I miss you. But for now, back here in Washington, Justice Department officials are briefing top Democrats and Republicans on a situation President Trump is calling Spygate, even though, by all reliable accounts, it doesn't involve a spy. The briefing is about a confidential FBI source who aided in the investigation into whether the Trump campaign coordinated with Russia to win the 2016 election. On Monday, President Trump hereby demanded the Justice Department look into whether this informant was used for political purposes. He told the press he's not undercutting the Russia investigation. He just wants transparency.
When they look at the documents, I think people are going to see a lot of bad things happen. I hope it's not so, because if it is, there's never been anything like it in the history of our country. No, we're not undercutting. We're cleaning everything up. What I'm doing is a service to this country, and I did a great service to this country by firing James Comey.
So, Gene, you wrote this week that the constitutional crisis is here. That's a quote. And you said that Trump's power play is a gross misuse of his presidential authority and a dangerous departure from longstanding norms.
Well, it is. I mean, you know, the norm for many decades in this country has been that the president does not seek to direct the Justice Department and the FBI in that way, and rather gives them a large measure of independence to pursue, to decide what investigations to pursue and how to pursue them. And so the idea of basically ordering an investigation of the investigation in this way, ordering the release of documents that our law enforcement and intelligence agencies do not want to release for reasons they hold very dear. You know, that crosses a line, and we keep crossing lines. And Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, found a way to kind of finesse it, maybe, you know, so it's not as bad from the point of view of the agencies and those traditions as it might otherwise have been. But I do think that's how uncrossable lines get crossed. They just kind of, you know, it happens, and then we look back and we say, wow, that was a real departure from the way the American presidency has behaved in my lifetime.
So I want to get back to Rod Rosenstein and his finessing, but first, backing up even a little more, David, you have a long history of covering the intelligence community. Is Stephen Halper, this informant, a spy?
So from what we know about Stephen Halper, who's been named in the Washington Post after initially being named in conservative publications, it seems accurate to say that he was a regular informant, the French say correspondant valable, intermediary, as it were, in talking to people of interest. And there were people in the Trump campaign who, because of their contacts with Russians, who were regarded as either intelligence officers or in contact with that aspect of Russia, persons of interest for the FBI. The point that I think Donald Trump is resisting willfully is that's the FBI's job. When this investigation began, we need to remember, as a counterintelligence investigation. It was an investigation of activities by the Russian intelligence agencies in a political covert action against the United States. and the FBI was asked to look into the details. They began in July. The first contact with Halper is said to have had with a Trump figure, Carter Page, happened just before the formal opening of the FBI investigation. But at that time, it's alleged there were already reasons to be concerned about Page, to ask questions about him. So this is one of those situations where, disturbingly, the FBI and the intelligence community's doing its job, as it's always been understood, has been attacked by the president, treated as a scandal. The Spygate term that he's invented is outrageous. And you know, I think the worry is this going to intimidate people in the intelligence community from doing their jobs? Because in the end, they're keeping the country safe. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, it's dishonest by the president. I think it's quite effective, actually. I mean, he is, in the sense that what he is doing is a branding exercise, and he's really, really good at branding. That's how he built the Trump organization. That's what the Trump organization became. Not a company that builds, you know, great big buildings anymore, but a company that makes favorable deals to get its name on buildings, and that builds the Trump brand. And he really knows how to do that. And he, you know, there was an interesting, the Associated Press reported last night or this morning that Trump had told a friend that he had settled on the word spy because it resonated more with people. People got that in a way they wouldn't get, you know, retired college professor informant or something like that.
Even if you capitalize the R and the C.
It's not the same thing, but Spygate, it is, you know, you got to say, as a marketing campaign, it is brilliant.
Oh, look.
It is the latest in a series of brilliant marketing ploys by Donald Trump, and you know, he is so good at this that people who want to hold him accountable had better sort of understand that, I think, and also find a better way of dealing with it than just sort of. I mean, we complain about it, but it has the impact that he wants.
The counter-branding exercise was begun by Adam Schiff, the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, who said, "This isn't Spygate, this is Liegate." So we'll see whether that one sticks.
We'll see if
whether that
that
starts trending on
sticks,
Twitter.
but, you know, somebody at some point is going to learn to get out in front of these things, right? And be the first to do the definitional phrase, because there's a first mover advantage in this game.
So let's talk about Rod Rosenstein. Is the Justice Department capitulating here, or is it doing the right thing by explaining its practices, or what exactly is he doing? Clearly he's walking kind of a tightrope. Christine?
Well, I can't really answer that question, to be honest, but it does seem like he is walking a tightrope. I think that one of the more effective moments of, if not branding, at least like theater around this whole situation is how members of Congress, members of the White House are sort of rushing around demanding that documents be put forth, demanding to be able, you know, to view these reports, when it's not clear that even if they saw them, they would understand what was going on in them, whether if they saw them, they would be able to do anything about their contents, and whether that's even a safe thing to happen. It's notable that while people say that they want to investigate documents, that's obscuring the fact that convictions have already happened. There are already many people under suspicion, under investigation, who have, you know, pled guilty. And meanwhile, we're just like discussing a flurry of paper. It seems, one would hope, I would hope at least, that Rosenstein is sufficiently familiar with this situation and the documents to know how to show, I think, enough to assuage curiosity without giving the whole game away. Whether he can, I don't know. I can just hope.
I think Rosenstein is doing damage control, trying to cope with this PR campaign, this campaign of distraction and division that President Trump has undertaken. He is accused by some of bowing to what, as Gene said, is this extraordinary assertion of presidential involvement in law enforcement investigation. I think he must see this as his least bad option.
I believe he does.
I mean, this is going to come down to whether the moral character of Republicans in Congress. I'm just going to say it flat out.
Yeah.
I mean, do people, Republicans who are afraid of the Donald Trump insurgency, do they have the strength of character to stand up and say, no, these attacks on law enforcement, any attempt to interfere directly in the Mueller investigation is unacceptable, and we won't allow it. And unless they show that strength, it's hard to see, Gina, Christine, what the barrier is to this president. He's shown he'll do anything.
If you don't stop him, he will keep going. Yeah. He will keep pushing. And he pushed against this door, and it opened up. Right, it may have just opened a crack, but it gave somewhat. I agree with you that Rosenstein is that this is the least bad option for him, and I think there is a very good possibility that he. Well, let's put it this way. He, other things he has said especially in the recent past, have suggested to me that he is quite firmly committed to the Mueller investigation and to protecting the Mueller investigation, however best he believes he can do that. He's had the option to sort of, resign and protest or, throw up his hands in disgust or whatever. And he seems to me to have made the conscious decision not to do that in order to because he is kind of an umbrella over the investigation, and he has a standing to do that. I mean, it's likely that President Trump is not out of the blue just going to fire him. That could be a problem for him, and he's been told by his allies on the Hill that would be a problem for him. So I think he's playing this game the best he can, and in this case, it meant giving something to Trump. I think it's really regrettable that that there hasn't been more or virtually any sort of outrage expressed by Republicans on the Hill who could be tamping this down, and they're not.
So on Facebook, Lauren Van Loo Aquaviva says, can we discuss the chilling effect this has on our intelligence and national security apparatus, given that all informants and sources are now at risk of being exposed if it's politically convenient for a specific politician or party? David, I imagine you can speak to that.
Well, I think that correspondent has put the finger on precisely the issue. People who cooperate in secret with our intelligence agencies do so on the expectation that they will be protected. And here's an example that shows that we are now so divided, so politicized, that the normal protections that the FBI or the CIA would offer are less credible. Here's another problem. The other thing that drives our intelligence collection is our liaison with foreign services. And it's vastly more important than most people realize. I mean, our ability to get people inside the tent, as it were, of terrorist organizations is close to zero, but we depend on friendly services that help us do that. And I think what's going on now has shocked the intelligence world, shocked our liaison partners. It's one reason. There's some reasons to be upset that Gina Haspel is the CIA director, but one reason to be really happy that she's the director is she is a pro. She's been doing this for 30 years. She's very good at liaison, and the heads of other services are going to look at her and be reassured that she and the organization she runs will protect these secrets despite whatever crazy things the White House is trying to pull off.
Just a thought, and I'm thinking back here, and I don't have the clearest moment, but I feel like there was an incident earlier in the administration, too, when there was some discussion from other countries about no longer sharing information with the U.S. or no longer
It
sharing
was,
information with the
that
White
was
House.
President Trump's conversation with the Russians, right after the firing of Comey,
With
and
Israel,
he let slip.
maybe?
When he talked to
leaked-
Kislyak
when he had Kislyak and
Yes.
And
Lavrov,
Yes.
the foreign
Lavrov,
minister,
right,
into his office, and
let
then he
slip something
blabbed
about
Right.
Syria.
about
Happening in Syria,
intelligence
yeah.
that had been obtained. It was said by Israel. People went nuts
Yeah.
because that was supposedly, super compartmented,
Yeah.
very sensitive. Another moment that, had bells ringing all over the world was when Trump said, the Trump Tower has been bugged, and decided that it was British Communications Intelligence, GCHQ, that had done
Oh, my
it.
goodness.
And the Brits were so indignant that they basically, and GCHQ never says anything. It would not
Yeah,
tell the Prime
exactly.
Minister
Exactly, right. They
that
wouldn't- they
her
wouldn't-
that her pants were on fire. But they issued an immediate statement
yeah,
saying
it's
that this
extraordinary.
never happened, and it was because they were so upset that they had been drawn into this.
It's
So
extraordinary.
it seems like we're just sacrificing a lot of our credibility in the intelligence space, in the sort of global leadership space, generally at the altar of Trump's ego, whether he wants to show off to his new Russian friends, whether he wants to make a giant fuss in Congress to distract from whatever nefarious activities he's up to today. It's America that's sort of going to be trampled over for him, and that's just where we are right now. And the Republicans seem willing to let that happen. And I guess we'll see going forward. It's just disappointing, I think, for our standing overall.
So speaking of disappointing, even closer to home, President Trump and his supporters scored a touchdown in an ongoing cultural contest this week after months of controversy over football players taking a knee to protest police violence and systemic racism in the justice system. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell made this announcement.
If anyone is on the field and is disrespectful to the anthem or the flag, there would be a fine from the league against the team. The team will have its own work rules, will be consistent with the overall policy. We think that we've come up with a balanced process here and a procedure and policy that will allow those players who feel that they can't stand for the anthem to stay in the locker room.
So he says disrespectful to the anthem or the flag. I think his idea of what that means is pretty different from what it means to many of the NFL players who tweeted about it later. So, Christine, what do you think that means, disrespectful to the anthem or the flag?
I hate this entire situation so much. I think it's ridiculous. And this is just the latest in a series of ridiculous steps. But you asked what being disrespectful to the anthem or the flag means. And I think that that is a question that's at issue that nobody seems to want to define, because no one is being disrespectful to the anthem or the flag by kneeling, by refusing to leave the locker room, by simply questioning whether, in fact, we as Americans, as a country, are living up, to the great ideals that are set forth in the anthem and are shown by our flying of the flag. The fact that, asking America to be better to black people, to black men, to minorities is seen as disrespectful, I think says something about what really matters, what we think America stands for, as opposed to what it should stand for.
So the NFL is collateral damage in this. The president used this as a wedge issue, as wedge politics to essentially he drives a wedge, and either you're with him or against him on this. Either you love the flag and the anthem and America, or you don't, right? And it's a way of further cementing the relationship with basically with his supporters, who have some of whom have drifted away, some of whose allegiance might not be. This is a way of saying, yeah, that's right, Donald Trump really is my kind of guy. I love the flag, I love the anthem, I stand up. And it matters, I think, in this, political maneuver that on you know, you put on the other side of this fence, which is not really a fence, you put on the other side a whole bunch of African American players, you know, who are kneeling in a very public way to protest against police violence. And remember, that's another sort of,
Right.
you know, according to Donald Trump, the police are never wrong, you know, and if you think they are ever wrong, then you hate the police. And so the NFL is, in a sense, caught in the middle. This is not popular with players. There will be, you know, there will be troubles. There will be problems for teams that try to enforce this in the wrong way. The owner of the Jets came out immediately and said, do what you want. We'll pay any, you know, I personally will pay any fine for the team. You know, I have to stand with my players or kneel with my players. And owners are going to have different reactions. It's going to cause problems in some locker rooms, I think.
It's also notable that this was decided by the Owners Association. I guess it was not, this decision was not discussed with the Players Association at all. In essence, it was just handed down. And I think that sort of speaks to the relationship, or what Trump and many of his supporters see as the correct relationship. That, you know, these black athletes are here to, as Laura Ingraham put it, dribble or play and shut up. They're entertainment. They're not expected to have, their opinions are not wanted. No one asks them how they felt about America or anything else. They're expected to do their job and then let everyone else carry on with running the country. And I think we have already begun to see a backlash to that. And I think I'm hopeful that we'll see more, because, you know, these players, African Americans, black citizens, are not just tools. You know, not just people to be pushed around and told what to do and then ignored when they have real needs and real concerns that reflect on the real state of the country.
Well, you know, that question of not having consulted the Players Association will be litigated, I think. I mean, that's what the players say. You know, the set of NFL team owners has never been in the same sentence with the word woke. Right. I mean, this is like the least woke, you know, group as a group, because some are different from others. But and I think a good number of the owners think just what you said, that, you know, come and you play and I rule, and there's no give and take. In the NBA, at least the Players Association and most of the players believe there's a somewhat different relationship between, in general, between team ownership and the athletes, and more of a shared decision making and a sense of shared enterprise than there is in the NFL. The way the NFL, you know, the NFL does treat its players like cattle.
Like chattel?
Well, cattle, chattel, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think what Gene said is the political heart of this, which is that Donald Trump has sought, with this issue as with so many others, to exploit divisions that he sees in our country. If he sees an open fissure, he'll, you know, pound a wedge in it and seek to drive it open. The only thing that you can say for the decision that the owners made is that maybe it makes it harder for him to continue the exploitation of this issue. And, you know, we'll see how that goes. It appears, in one sense, to give him a win. The idea that every Sunday, you know, this would be, you know, a deepening wedge with people in our divided country so angry at getting. That would concern me. And, you know, what the right outcome is. You know, a lot of reasons to think this isn't the one that I decide. But if it reduces Trump's
I think that's a good
opportunity
point. No, I think
to
it's a good
create
point. If it's-
and exploit division, then I think
Yeah.
there's a benefit to that.
Right, and maybe they
will
wanted
look-
to be out of the spotlight a little and thought that this would put them out. Of course, so far that has not been the case.
Right,
but we'll
but they
see.
must have realized that
Yeah.
this would be a big deal.
You know,
They
our
may well have
country,
tried
we're
to.
we're near the boiling point. I sometimes think it's not a moment that is good. I just envisioned this going forward and Trump kind of driving it. That you'd have fans, booing from the seats of the stadium, and just a world that none of us want to be.
We have a comment from Judy Kinsman on YouTube who says, this flag situation, I think she means the football situation, reminds me of after the Twin Towers event, everyone drove around with American flags on their SUV antennas. So I think the same thing of a symbol for so much more, and seizing on the anthem and seizing on the flag, as this means supporting the troops, this means supporting America against anybody who would threaten it. And we also have, going way back to where we were before, a question from a YouTube watcher, Clockwork Zombie, who has been concerned about war with North Korea for months and wants to know if he should be worried. So keeping it very quick, should he be worried, David?
You should be worried about escalating tensions in the next while. I don't think I'd be worried right now about war. As tensions escalate, there will be a temptation for Donald Trump and his advisors to give North Korea a punch in the nose, is the phrase that was used. And I think that's just about the worst idea I can think of. But I think we are likely to head into a period of escalating tensions, probably not war.
So Clockwork Zombie, you can rest kind of easy for now. We're out of time, but not opinions. So check us out on WashingtonPost.com/opinions. And if you think the White House has hit a new low with a literal sinkhole in its front lawn, remember, it's only Thursday.